Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started, and I'm sure some people will come in while we're having our memorial service. But as I said, my name is Molly, and here today we are here to remember 13 of our neighbors, of our friends, of the people we eat meals with and share dinners with, ride in the elevator with. And so I would always like to start off with a poem. The poem I have today is Until We Meet Again. We think about you always. We talk about you still. You have never been forgotten, and you never will. We hold you close within our hearts, and here you will remain to walk, to guide us through our lives until we meet again. Okay, so as I said, we have 13 neighbors that we're going to be remembering today. And some photos are up here, some we will remember them by name, and I will light a candle for each one of our 13 neighbors. So our first neighbor that we will be remembering is Diane Gaynor. Thank you. There we go. Next up, we have Nancy Eason. Sandra Morrison. And with Sandra Morrison, I do want to add that her niece brought these lovely flowers for a memorial service today in her honor. Next up, I don't have all the dates up here, but they've all been within the last 3 months. Yes. Next up, we have Marlene Flom. Carl Corson. Paula Gabriel. Thomas Henry. Barbara Mackin. Karen Krishak. Linda Berlsheimer. Beth Roberts. Sandy Seller. And Ira Keshen. Now, these 13 people, as I said, were all in our community, all our neighbors and friends. If anybody would like to share a story, a memory about any of those 13 people, I welcome you to do so now. You are welcome to stand up and just share your memory or story, or I'm happy to hand you the mic if you want to come up to the front. Go ahead, Miliana. Do you want to come up to the front? No? Okay. Share your story and I can repeat it then. It's corded, so it might not go that far. We can try. Let's see. Oh, almost. Oh, good.
Hi. Oh, I don't want to put my back to anyone. I would like to say a few words about Barbara. I know I'm going to cry. I didn't expect that. What a lovely person, full of laughter, full of joy. She had the, she was Irish, so she had that look of the Irish in her. For gift of gab, she was wonderful. And every Friday, our Rosemary would make popcorn. Barbara and I never went to the movie. We went to have the popcorn. And we had such a good time. And I just loved her. I loved about her, her spark, her energy, her personality, her lovely sister Lillian here. Um, we're going to miss her. I'm glad she came to live here. How long did she live here, Lillian? 2 years. Okay. I'm glad she became a part of our family. We'll always remember her. We love you, Barbara.
Would anybody else like to share on or off the mic a story? Ruth?
I'll talk more about my sister Barbara. My sister Barbara was a very special person in my life. We were raised in an orphanage, and my mother and father died when we were very young. I was 4 when my mother died and 7 when my father died. Barbara was 5 years older than I, so she left the orphanage before I did, and she would come on visiting Sundays and take me out. And we would stop over by Loyola University. There was a little restaurant there, and I loved my milk. And when the waitress came and asked for our order, she'd say 2 coffees. So I never got my milk. She'd force me to drink that awful coffee, and I would drown it with sugar and cream, but it never tasted like my milk. Anyway, she was very, very good to me. On Easter one day, she brought me a beautiful polka dotted red and white dress, a white dress with red polka dots, and I thought I was just the queen of the ball. And at Christmas time, she would make it special for me. And she was always thinking of ways to make me happy, which she often did. But at the end, she had dementia, and she would think that everyone was trying to get one over on her, which nobody did. They all loved her. But as Miliana said, she was a talker, and she could tell you many a story. She went to Ireland a couple of times to visit her husband's relatives. Never got to meet our relatives, which I did. And when her husband died, it was like a miracle. About a week after, she got a phone call, and it was the McGuire side of the family. And we got to meet them, which we never knew because, as I said, my mother and father died when we were very young. Anyway, she was very happy to meet them and felt more fulfilled knowing she had family in Ireland. Anyway, I do miss her terribly, and I thank you all for being here to celebrate her life. Thank you.
So Ruth, I think you had something to say, and then whoever would like to go first. Barbara,
a few words about Sandy Morrison. If you ever talk to her, I'm sure you've heard her say, I'm going to leave the planet one of these days. And my comeback to her always was, give me 3 days notice, please. But she didn't. She just slipped away quietly in her sleep one night, and God bless her, she was a lovely lady.
I just like to add about Sandy Morrison because she had a quirky sense of humor. She was a lot of fun to get together with and talk, and we had some holiday meals together, and she always had a little different angle on anything you were talking about. She was a wonderful conversationalist, and she had her own view, and it was often a little quirky, and she was a sweetheart. I really liked her too, and I was astounded when she passed away.
So I'm just going to repeat that on the mic for anybody if you couldn't hear or for a recording also. So Barbara and Clarice were talking about Sandra Morrison and how just her sense of humor and how funny she was and how she told Barbara she's going to just leave this planet one day. And Barbara said give her 3 days notice. And she did not do that, but went nice and quietly, and her quirky sense of humor, said Clarice, and how just funny and loving she was. Marilyn?
I guess it's the Sandys who have quirky senses of humor, because I remember our other Sandy up here, Sandy Sellers, coming in on her drive-mobile to the improv class, and talk about quirky sense of humor or very dry sense of humor, that we would always know when Sandy was coming in that we were going to have some funny situations, because just tongue in cheek, she would come up with the weirdest things, and it always gave us a lot of laughter. And she doesn't realize what an effect she had on the people in that class, because even the director of the class, Terry, acknowledged her last week when she had died. So, yeah, God bless you, Sandy.
Did she have a beautiful garden?
I don't know. Other people might know.
Do you want to speak on that?
She had the fairy garden. I met Sandy when I went to improv for the first time, and I tried to hide in the back, and Terry said, "No, you got to come up front." And Sandy was my partner that time, and I had a really good time interacting with her. So much I still remember it when she doesn't, but I still remember that time because it was important for me. I found Sandy sometimes be rather brazen because some of her comments were directed at me, and I said, "Oh, shut up." But what I remember most about Sandy is more a grief that I felt, more so than I have felt for anybody before, except for family and that sort of stuff. And I thought about it, and I realized that I was a pastor, and sometimes when I would visit parishioners, some who were older and still living, they said, "I don't know why I'm still alive. All my friends have died." And I thought, well, that's interesting. I mean, it was sad, but it was interesting in many ways too, just that sort of sense. And I discovered that my sense of grief was the same thing. My friend had died. Who do I have left? Now I have some other friends, of course, but I don't know of any other friend who's died except for Sandy. There may be people a long time ago that I don't even remember anymore, but most of my current friends have not died. And Sandy was the first one who died. And it's the first time I've said, "Oh, my friend is gone." And so I'm here to honor Sandy as my friend.
Thank you. Let's go Ruth next, then we'll come back. Go ahead, Ruth.
I'll just be here. Sandy was such a splendid, caring human being. She had the best friend that she worked with for years, Penny. And when Penny was going through challenges, it wasn't easy for Sandy, but she did it as nobly and as lovingly and as empowering as possible. So I'd like to just pay homage to that special place in her. And also, I had also heard that she was preparing to leave this earth, and she was waiting patiently for that to happen. And I would watch her sit out in the courtyard with such peace, and it wasn't the waiting, it was just being in those moments. So I just like to pay homage to Sandy. And to Sandy, Sandy Sellers, who I did not know, there was a nobility to that woman and a strength and a presence. And I've heard many people love her. So I just like to acknowledge that as well. So both of them.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. Clarice, and then we'll come up here.
I'd also like to say something about Sandy Sellers, because I lost 2 Sandys in the last 3 months. And Sandy Sellers was my neighbor 2 doors down. And when we were quarantined and would be in our apartments during that part of the quarantine, we'd get our meals so early. And then I'd scoot over to her house and we'd play a game called Ticket to Ride, which was very complicated. Sandy Sellers loved games and card games, so we could play cards, and we play that game, and we play Mexican Train sometimes. But I know that she experienced a lot of pain, and I think she kept a very positive frame of mind despite the pain that she was in, and I think she tried to put out a positive vibe, even though she was often suffering a great deal.
Microphone.
I'd like to say a word about Beth Roberts. She was my neighbor 2 doors down, and I met her. She had not been here that long before she passed. I met her waiting for the elevator. I thought, what a pretty woman, very lovely, very, very, very sophisticated. And after I met her, I never saw her again. She never left her room. And I always wanted to knock on the door. And then I saw a big sign, oxygen in use. And I thought, well, maybe I better not bother her. Maybe I should have knocked. I just don't know. But anyway, I just want to say I'm very sad. I was very sad to hear that she passed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a story or memory, anything they would like to share? I have a couple little memories, but let me grab my notes first. Okay, so just going off of some of the people we haven't mentioned too much yet. Nancy Easton. If you all knew Nancy, she was yay tall and full of spunk, the spunkiest person I have ever known, and she was a big improv person also. Nancy was a preschool teacher, and she told me once when I was wearing colorful pants, because I have many colorful pants, she said I dressed that way teaching preschool for decades, and so now I just wear black and gray. And so she always had something little funny to say. And then after coming out of our lockdown, I mainly saw her at improv, but she was always just the most lovely person.
Is she up there?
I don't think we have a photo of Nancy. Yeah, we just have the ones that families have given us. Ira, he is our most recent person to pass away. And if you don't know who Ira is, we don't have his photo yet, but he had a scooter and he 9 times out of 10 would have a green Michigan hoodie on. Not University of Michigan, Michigan State. And so once upon a time I told him, oh, my dad went to University of Michigan. I guess you guys are rivals. And ever since then, he would always joke how he's rivals with my dad, a man he's never met, just because the 2 Michigans going against each other. Beth Roberts, since Peggy was talking about her, I just want to add a little bit about her. So Beth, she actually lived at the Breakers a while ago. She lived here for a number of years, and then she moved to go be with family. But then she told me, I was here the day she moved in. I was here on the weekend, and she was so excited to move back into the Breakers. She said the Breakers is her home. This is where she's meant to be. She was so excited to be back here. And so, Peggy, I know you're saying you don't know if you should have knocked on the door. Just know that she was happy to be back here. she felt that this was her home and she loved it a lot more than being outside. So the day she moved back in, she was ecstatic to be here.
She wasn't here long, was she, the second time?
No, not the second time. She was not here very long, but overall, in her breakers years, she was here for a while. Yeah, and then let's see, Marlene Flum. We haven't mentioned her yet, and I'll say Marlene, when we first went into lockdown, she was the first person, I think the very first person that called me that asked me to teach her how to use Zoom. I did not know how to use Zoom yet, and that was the big thing in lockdown was Zoom church services, Zoom choir classes, everything was on this new platform called Zoom that no one knew how to use yet. So then that was my little challenge of learning how to use Zoom, and then Marlene and I learned how to use Zoom, but then we both felt so happy once we finally learned how to do it. And Marlene would always dress to the nines, too. I would say when she was going down to dinner, she would always be very put together, looking very proper, spoke very proper. She was a lovely woman also, as were all of these people, all of these neighbors and friends. And so now I invite you all, if there's anybody outside of our community that has passed away recently that you just want to share their name, I welcome you to do so now. Go ahead, Miliana. Tim Weidman, yes. He was one of our Breakers friends, passed I think about a year ago now, but definitely a friend by all. Any other names anybody would like to share? Okay. Well then I will go on to our next reading. Our next reading is When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly, hurt with clarity. Our memories suddenly sharpen, examine, gnaws on words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizen. Our minds, formed and informed by the radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period of peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. And I would like to end today with singing Amazing Grace. So if you all would like to grab your lyrics, I will have music to accompany us. So when you're ready, we will get started.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many days I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been lived 10,000 years, like shining as the sun, we've come this day to sing God's praise. And when we first begun, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today.